The message came at exactly midnight Galactic Standard Time. Every human in the known universe received it at the same moment. Three words appeared on every screen, every communicator, every device capable of displaying text. Remember who you are. Then Earth went silent. Commander Jack was eating dinner when his communicator buzzed. He looked at the message and felt something cold move through his chest. He was stationed on Imperial Station Zenith, a massive structure that orbited the gas giant 7, far from Earth but close enough to feel its absence. He pushed his food away and walked to the observation deck where Lieutenant Kate was already staring at the communication monitors with wide eyes. The screens showed nothing. Every channel that connected to Earth displayed static. Every frequency was empty. It was as if someone had reached out and erased humanity's home world from existence. Kate turned to him with fear in her eyes. She was young, only 26 years old, and she had never known a universe where Earth did not exist. None of them had. For 300 years, Earth had been the beating heart of human civilization. It sent out signals constantly. News broadcasts, entertainment, government communications, personal messages from families to their children scattered across the stars. The flow of information never stopped. Until now. Jack tried to stay calm. He was 43 years old and he had served in the Imperial fleet for 20 years. He had seen battles and disasters and moments when everything seemed lost, but he had never felt anything like this. The silence from Earth was not just an absence of sound. It was an absence of hope. He contacted every human station within communication range. The responses came back quickly and they all said the same thing. Earth was gone, not destroyed as far as anyone could tell. The planet was still there. Satellites still orbited it, but no one was answering. No ships were launching. No signals were being sent. 8 billion people had simply stopped talking. The alien species noticed almost immediately. The Galactic Empire was not ruled by humans. Humanity was just one of dozens of species that lived under the Imperial banner. They were the oldest and most powerful. They had ships that could cross the galaxy in days and weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. There were warriors who lived for battle and conquest. There were ancient beings who had existed for millions of years and viewed younger species with something between amusement and contempt. High Chancellor of the received the news in his palace on the crystal world of Prime. He was a tall creature with silver skin and eyes that glowed like dying stars. He had ruled for 2 centuries and he had always disliked humans. They were too ambitious. They spread too fast. They earned too much respect from species who should have known better. He smiled when he heard that Earth had gone silent. Perhaps now the humans would learn their place. Without their home world they were nothing. Scattered colonies, isolated outposts, easy targets. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, Ambassador Carter received 17 urgent messages within the first hour. Representatives from other species wanted to know what was happening. Some of them sounded concerned. Most of them sounded hungry. She was 51 years old with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her entire career building alliances and negotiating treaties that protected human interests. Now she watched those alliances begin to crumble. The ambassador, a massive creature named, contacted her directly. His species looked like something from a nightmare. 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like black iron. His voice rumbled like thunder when he spoke. He told her that the Dominion was reconsidering its trade agreements with human colonies. The treaties had been signed with Earth. If Earth no longer existed as a functioning government, then the treaties were void. He suggested that humans should begin preparing to renegotiate from a position of weakness. Listened without expression. When he finished, she thanked him for his concern and ended the communication. Then she contacted every human colony she could reach and told them to prepare for the worst. On the frontier world of 3, Captain Grant heard the news while supervising a mining operation. He was 38 years old, broad-shouldered and quiet, a man who had spent his life pulling valuable minerals from dead rocks. He was not a soldier. Neither were the 42 people who worked for him. They were engineers and miners and technicians. They had families on other worlds. They had dreams of retirement and peaceful lives. Gathered them together and told them what had happened. He watched their faces change as they understood what it meant. Some of them cried. Some of them cursed. A woman named Grace, his second in command, just nodded slowly and asked what they should do. Did not have an answer. He was not trained for this. None of them were, but he remembered the message that had appeared on his screen before Earth went silent. Remember who you are. He did not know exactly what it meant, but he felt something stir inside him when he thought about it. Something old and stubborn and impossible to kill. He told his crew that they would continue working. They would stay alert. They would trust each other and no one else. And they would wait to see what the universe threw at them next. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. Human colonists looked at each other and wondered what would happen now. They were scattered and isolated and surrounded by species who had never truly accepted them. The Galactic Empire had tolerated humanity because Earth was powerful and connected. Without that connection, humans were vulnerable. But something strange began to happen in those first dark hours. Instead of panic, there was determination. Instead of despair, there was anger. The aliens expected humans to collapse without their home world. They expected surrender and begging and weakness. They did not understand that humanity had never survived by being strong. Humanity survived by refusing to die. Jack stood on the observation deck of Imperial Station Zenith and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was silent. Somewhere out there, enemies were gathering. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humans would not go quietly into the darkness. They never had. They never would. The fall of the Galactic Empire began the day Earth went silent, but no one knew it yet. No one except the humans who felt that ancient fire burning in their chests and knew that this was not the end of their story. This was just the beginning. 3 weeks passed and the Galactic Empire began to break apart. The alien species had waited for this moment longer than any human knew. They had smiled at humanity for 3 centuries while secretly hating them. Now the smiles were gone, and the hatred was out in the open. Ambassador Carter stood in the great chamber of the Imperial Senate on Nexus Prime. The room was massive, built to hold representatives from 100 different species. Crystal columns rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. Floating platforms carried delegates from worlds that humans had never visited. The air smelled different depending on where you stood because each species needed its own atmosphere to breathe. Stood on the human platform alone. She had no guards, no assistants, no support. Other human diplomats had been recalled to their colonies or had simply disappeared. She was the last official voice of humanity in the imperial government, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Ambassador of the Dominion spoke first. His massive form filled his platform, and his voice echoed through the chamber like the growl of some ancient beast. He demanded that human trade routes be given to the... He said that humans had no right to control the Orion Corridor now that Earth was gone. He said that the strong should rule and the weak should serve. Listened without moving. When finished, she looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. Some of them showed pity. Most showed hunger. They were waiting for her to break. They were waiting for her to beg. She smiled instead. She told them that the treaties remained valid. She told them that law did not change simply because circumstances changed. She told them that humanity would honor its agreements and expected the same from its partners. Laughter filled the chamber. The delegate, an ancient creature named who looked like a twisted tree made of living glass, leaned forward on his platform. He had existed for 10,000 years, and he had seen species rise and fall like waves on a shore. He told that laws required enforcement. He asked who would enforce human laws now. He asked if scattered colonies and broken fleets would stand against the might of the older species. Kept smiling. She told that he had never understood humans. None of them had. Then she left the chamber without looking back. They moved first because they had always been impatient despite their long lives. High Chancellor ordered a fleet of 60 warships to enter the system. It was a test, was home to 3 million human colonists on a world of blue oceans and green continents. It was prosperous and undefended, the perfect target. The commander was named, and he was young for his species, only 400 years old. He had never fought humans before. He had only heard stories about how they surrendered easily and begged for mercy. He expected this mission to be simple. He expected to return home as a hero. His fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately broadcast a message to the planet below. Submit or die. Those were the only options. He gave them 1 hour to respond. Governor received the message in his office in the capital city. He was 63 years old with white hair and tired eyes. He had been a bureaucrat his entire life. He had never fired a weapon. He had never commanded troops. He had spent his career signing documents and attending meetings and trying to make life better for the people he served. His security chief, a woman named Laura Bishop, asked if they should prepare surrender documents. Looked out his window at the city he had helped build. He saw families walking in the streets. He saw children playing in parks. He saw everything that humanity had created on this distant world, and he thought about what would happen if they surrendered. They did not take prisoners. Everyone knew this. Surrender meant slavery at best and extinction at worst. The alien species had tolerated humans only because Earth had been powerful enough to demand respect. Without that power, humans were just another species to be conquered and consumed. Turned to Laura and told her to send a message to every human colony in range. He told her to say that they had made their choice. Now humanity would make its own choice. Then he walked outside and stood on the steps of the Capitol building. The ships were visible in the sky now, dark shapes against the blue. People gathered around him, thousands of them, looking up at the invaders and then looking at their governor. They were afraid. Of course they were afraid, but there was something else in their eyes too, something that recognized because he felt it himself. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. He told them that they would not surrender. He told them that humans had never survived by giving up. He told them that their ancestors had crossed an ocean of stars to build this world, and they would not hand it over to creatures who thought they could take it by force. The crowd did not cheer. They were too scared for that, but they nodded. They looked at each other and saw the same determination reflected back. They went to their homes and their businesses and they began to prepare. They did not know how to fight a fleet of warships. They did not have weapons or training or any real chance of survival, but they refused to surrender. On 3, Captain Grant received Governor message. He read it twice and then showed it to Grace. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked what they could do to help. Did not know. They were miners, not soldiers. Their world was far from, and they had no ships capable of reaching it in time. But he knew that they could not simply wait and watch. He gathered his crew and told them that everything was about to change. He told them that the galaxy was about to learn what humans were really made of. Grace looked at him with steady eyes. She told him that she had always known this day would come. All humans knew it deep down. They knew that the other species hated them. They knew that the peace would not last forever. They just hoped it would last a little longer. Nodded, he told her that hope was good, but preparation was better, and he had a feeling that somewhere out there, someone had been preparing for a very long time. Commander Jack watched the reports from aboard Imperial Station Zenith. He saw the fleet surrounding the planet. He saw the deadline approaching, and he felt something shift inside him, a certainty that he could not explain. The Battle 4 would be the first test, and somehow, impossibly, he believed that humanity would pass it, the expected surrender. They received something else entirely. Commander watched his sensors with growing confusion as the deadline passed, and no white flag appeared from the human colony below. He had given them a chance to live. He had offered them mercy, and they had responded with silence. He ordered his fleet to begin the assault and watched his descend toward the planet's surface. The first wave never reached the ground. From hidden positions across the planet, weapons activated that had never appeared on any survey. Mining lasers designed to cut through asteroid rock turned their beams toward the sky. Industrial electromagnetic pulses meant for processing ore disrupted navigation systems. And from the ocean floor, where no alien had ever thought to look, defense platforms rose and began firing missiles that moved faster than anything they had ever encountered. Lost 12 ships in the first 10 minutes. He ordered a retreat and regrouped his fleet at a safe distance while his officers tried to understand what had happened. The humans were supposed to be defenseless. The humans were supposed to be weak. Instead, they had weapons that should not exist and the will to use them. On the ground, Governor watched the burning wreckage fall from the sky. He stood in the command center beneath the capital city, a bunker that had been built 300 years ago when the colony was first founded. He had always wondered why the original colonists had built such extensive underground facilities. Now he understood. They had known this day would come. They had prepared for it, and they had passed that preparation down through generations without ever explaining why. Lieutenant Commander Blake coordinated the defense from a secondary bunker near the coast. He was 29 years old and he had spent his career managing supply lines and logistics. He had never fired a weapon in combat, but when they attacked, something woke up inside him. He found that he understood tactics and strategy in a way that surprised even himself. He knew where to position forces. He knew how to exploit weaknesses. He knew how to win. They regrouped and attacked again. This time they came with overwhelming force, all 60 ships focusing their fire on the planetary defense grid. They destroyed platforms and bunkers and entire sections of coastline. They thought they were winning. They were wrong. The colonists had evacuated to underground shelters long before the attack began. The platforms they destroyed were automated, controlled remotely by operators who were safely hidden kilometers away. And for every weapon they knocked out, 2 more seemed to take its place. Directed his forces with calm precision. He ordered counterattacks when the enemy was overextended. He ordered retreats when the enemy was too strong. He turned every building into a fortress and every street into a trap. They had expected to conquer a planet in hours. Instead, they found themselves fighting for every meter of ground. Commander grew desperate. His fleet had taken heavy losses, and his ground forces were being torn apart by an enemy that refused to stay dead. Every time he thought he had won a sector, human fighters would emerge from tunnels and buildings, and the fighting would start again. He had never seen anything like it. He had never imagined that any species could fight with such fury. The battle lasted 9 days. 9 days of constant combat across land and sea and sky. 9 days of humans dying and killing and refusing to give up. When a group of farmers ran out of ammunition, they attacked soldiers with farming tools. When a school was surrounded by enemy troops, the teachers armed their students with whatever they could find and held the building until reinforcements arrived. When a hospital was threatened, the doctors and nurses carried their patients to safety through underground tunnels and then returned to fight alongside the defenders. Blake earned a name during those 9 days. They called him the Ghost of because he seemed to be everywhere at once. He appeared behind enemy lines when they thought they were safe. He struck at supply depots and communication centers. He turned their own tactics against them and made them fear the shadows. On the 8th day, he attempted one final assault, committed his remaining forces to a massive push toward the capital city. He believed that if he could capture Governor, the resistance would collapse. He was wrong about that too. Refused to evacuate. He stood on the steps of the Capitol building as troops advanced through the streets. He was surrounded by civilians who had picked up weapons and joined the fight. They were old and young, men and women, people who had never expected to be soldiers. They stood together and waited for the enemy. They never reached them. Blake led a counterattack that struck the enemy from 3 directions at once. Human fighters emerged from buildings and tunnels and sewers. They fought with everything they had, and they did not stop until the last soldier was dead or fleeing. Commander ordered a full retreat on the 9th day. He had started with 60 warships. He left with 43, and most of those were badly damaged. He had lost thousands of soldiers on the ground. He had failed completely, and he knew that his career was over. But more than that, he knew that everything he believed about humans was wrong. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Though one of the oldest and most powerful species in existence had been defeated by a human colony, not a military outpost, not a fortified stronghold, a civilian colony with no official defenses had fought off an invasion fleet and won. Ambassador Carter received messages from dozens of species who wanted to know what had happened. She told them the truth. Humans were not like other species. They did not calculate odds or weigh costs. When threatened, they simply refused to lose. The delegate contacted her privately. He told her that what happened on was not rational, agreed with him. She told him that it was not rational, it was human, and she told him that was just the beginning. On 3, Captain Grant and Grace listened to the reports from. They heard about the hidden weapons and the underground bunkers and the colonists who fought like warriors. They looked at each other and understood something that they had always suspected but never admitted. Humanity had been preparing for this war for 300 years. Someone had known it was coming. Someone had made sure that every colony, every outpost, every human settlement had the tools it needed to survive. And now those tools were being used. The Galactic Empire trembled, and the humans were just getting started. They did not make the same mistakes as They came with overwhelming force, and they came to destroy. High Warlord assembled the largest fleet in history. 300 warships filled with the finest warriors his species had ever produced. 50 troop carriers loaded with soldiers who had trained their entire lives for combat. And 2 planet crackers, massive weapons capable of shattering a world into pieces. He chose his target carefully. New Boston was the jewel of the human frontier, a world of 12 million people with cities that sparkled like diamonds and forests that stretched to every horizon. It was beautiful and prosperous, and they wanted to see it burn. Broadcast his intentions to the entire galaxy. He wanted everyone to watch. He wanted every species to see what happened to humans who dared to resist. They had failed because they were weak and arrogant. They were neither. Governor Maria received the warning 3 days before the fleet arrived. She was 45 years old with dark hair and calm eyes that had seen too much in her lifetime. She had grown up on a colony that was nearly destroyed by pirates. She had watched her parents die protecting their home. She understood better than most what war really meant. She called a meeting of every leader on the planet. Military commanders, civilian officials, scientists, engineers, teachers, doctors. She told them what was coming, and she asked them what they wanted to do. Surrender was an option. They might accept it. They might not kill everyone. They might just enslave the population and strip the planet of resources. No one chose surrender. Admiral Chris Hawkins commanded the defense fleet. He was 52 years old, and he had served in space for 30 years. His fleet was small, 18 aging frigates that had seen better days, a handful of armed transport ships that were never designed for combat, and 1 battleship, the Defiant, which was the pride of New Boston but still outmatched by any 3 cruisers. Chris looked at his fleet and then looked at the reports showing 300 enemy ships approaching. The math was simple. He could not win this fight with what he had. But he smiled anyway because he knew something that they did not. Captain Grant commanded the Defiant. She was 38 years old, and she had served under Chris Hawkins for a decade. She knew him well enough to recognize that smile. She asked him what he was planning. Chris told her that Earth had left them gifts. Hidden throughout the system were weapons and defenses that had been placed there when the colony was founded. No one had known about them until the day Earth went silent. Then the message had come. Remember who you are. And with it came access codes and coordinates and instructions for systems that should not exist. The fleet arrived on a Tuesday morning, positioned his ships in a perfect formation around the planet. He activated his communication systems and broadcast his demands. The humans had 1 hour to surrender their world. If they refused, he would crack the planet open and watch everyone die. Maria responded personally. She told that humans did not surrender. She told him that New Boston would fight until the last person drew breath. She told him to do his worst. Laughed, he ordered his fleet to advance. The first wave of ships crossed into weapons range and immediately began dying. From hidden bunkers across the planet, 57 automated defense platforms rose into the sky and opened fire. In the asteroid belt beyond the planet, mines that had floated dormant for 3 centuries activated and began hunting for targets. And from the largest moon, a weapon emerged that made freeze in his command chair. The hammer of Saul was a mass driver that stretched for kilometers across the lunar surface. It accelerated tungsten rods to nearly the speed of light and fired them with perfect accuracy. The first rod struck a cruiser and turned it into expanding gas. The second rod hit another, and another, and another. Watched 75 of his ships die in the opening minutes of the battle. He had never seen anything like it. He had never imagined that humans could build such weapons. He ordered his fleet to scatter and find the source of the devastating fire. Admiral Chris Hawkins led his small fleet into the chaos. The human ships were fast and nimble where they were large and slow. They wove between enemy vessels and targeted weak points that armor was not designed to protect. The Defiant led every charge with Captain Grant broadcasting on all frequencies. She told them that they had come to destroy humans. She told them that humans were not so easily destroyed. The battle raged for 3 days. Brought his planet crackers forward, determined to end the fight by destroying New Boston entirely. The hammer of Saul targeted them immediately. The first planet cracker exploded before it could fire. The second managed to charge its weapon before a tungsten rod turned it into debris. On the ground, troops attempted to land and establish a foothold. They found every landing zone mined and every building fortified. A schoolteacher named Ben organized a guerrilla unit from his neighbors and family. They had no military training. They had farming equipment and homemade explosives and the fury of people defending their homes. They destroyed an entire armored column in a single night. They could not understand what was happening. They were the finest warriors in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of species. They had never lost a war. And now they were being slaughtered by farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who should have been terrified. By the end of the 3rd day, had lost 218 ships. His ground forces had been decimated. His reputation was in ruins. He ordered a full retreat and fled the system with whatever remained of his fleet. He survived long enough to return home. 1 month later, his own people executed him for the shame he had brought upon them. The greatest warlord of his generation, killed by humans who should have been easy prey. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiant and watched the fleet disappear into the darkness of space. Her ship was damaged and half her crew was wounded, but she was smiling. They had done something impossible. They had defeated an enemy that should have crushed them. She opened a channel to every human in the system. She told them that they had won. She told them that the galaxy would remember this day, and she told them that this was just the beginning. Across the stars, humans heard the news and felt something change inside them. They were not weak. They were not helpless. They were humanity, and they would never be conquered. 1 year had passed since Earth went silent and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Galactic Empire existed only in name. The Council had fractured into 6 warring factions, each blaming the others for the disaster at. The Dominion had collapsed into civil war after the execution of High Warlord. Species that had once cowered before the great powers now looked around and saw opportunity. Old alliances crumbled. New ones formed. And through it all, the human colony stood unbroken. Ambassador Carter had become something more than a diplomat. She led the human coalition now, a loose alliance of colonies that stretched across 1,000 light years. They had no central government. They had no emperor or president or ruling council. They had only each other and a shared determination that no one would ever threaten them again. She stood in the great chamber of the Imperial Senate on Nexus Prime, the same room where she had been laughed at 1 year ago. The chamber was half empty now. Many species had withdrawn from the Empire entirely. Those who remained watched her with something new in their eyes. Not contempt, not pity, fear. Address them all. She reminded them of what they had said when Earth went silent. They had called humans weak. They had called them scattered and broken. They had predicted that without their home world, humanity would fade into nothing. She asked them how those predictions had worked out. No one answered. The silence stretched through the chamber like a living thing. She told them that humans did not need pity or protection. She told them that humanity had survived for thousands of years by adapting and fighting and refusing to die. She told them that Earth had not been their strength. Earth was where they had learned to be strong. And now the entire galaxy knew what that strength looked like. In the outer reaches of the solar system, something was happening that no one had expected. Long-range sensors across human space detected movement near the sun. Ships were emerging from behind the solar corona, vessels of human design, but built on a scale that made observers gasp. Commander Jack stood on the bridge of the largest ship ever constructed by any species. The Sol Ascendant was 10 kilometers long, a mobile colony and warship combined. It carried a population of 200,000 humans and weapons that could challenge any fleet in existence. And it was not alone. Thousands of ships surrounded it, a fleet that had been built in secret over 3 centuries, hidden in the one place no one would think to look. Jack had been promoted far beyond his original station. When Earth went silent, he had been a mid-level commander on a distant space station. Now he was an admiral, chosen by the people who had planned this moment for generations. He did not know why they had chosen him. He only knew that he would not fail them. He received a communication from Ambassador Carter. She told him that the galaxy was watching. She told him that humanity was ready to learn the truth. He nodded and activated the ship's broadcast systems. The message went out to every corner of known space. Every species, every world, every station received it at the same moment. Jack spoke in a calm voice that carried the weight of 300 years of preparation. He told the galaxy that Earth had not fallen. Earth had transformed. For 3 centuries, humanity had known that this day would come. They had known that the other species would eventually try to destroy them, and so they had prepared. The silence was not death. The silence was evolution. He explained that Earth's entire population had relocated to hidden stations and ships throughout the solar system. They had spent a year building and preparing and waiting for the right moment. Now that moment had arrived. Governor watched the broadcast from. He was standing in the same spot where he had faced the invasion 1 year ago. Tears ran down his weathered face as he understood what had happened. Earth had not abandoned its children. Earth had been preparing to save them all along. Captain Grant and Grace watched together on 3. Their mining crew gathered around them, the same 42 people who had wondered what would happen when Earth went silent. Now they knew. They had been part of a plan that stretched back to the first days of human expansion into the stars. Admiral Grant raised a glass to her crew aboard the Defiant. They had fought and bled and nearly died defending New Boston. Now they understood why the fight had been worth it. Humanity was not just surviving. Humanity was rising. The Sol Ascendant moved out of the solar system and began its journey toward the heart of what had once been the Galactic Empire. Behind it came thousands of ships, a fleet that could challenge any force in existence. They were not coming to conquer. They were coming to ensure that no one would ever threaten humanity again. Jack thought about the message that had appeared on every human screen 1 year ago. Remember who you are. He understood it now. It was not a farewell. It was a reminder. Humans had always been meant for the stars. They had always been meant to overcome every obstacle and defeat every enemy. They just needed to remember that truth when the darkness came. The delegate watched the human fleet approach from his ancient. He had lived for 10,000 years, and he had seen many species rise and fall. But he had never seen anything like this. A species that had been written off as finished, rising from silence to become the most powerful force in the galaxy. It everything he thought he understood about the universe. He sent a message to Ambassador Carter. He told her that he had been wrong about humans. He told her that he would like to discuss a new alliance between their species. Smiled when she read the message. She remembered standing in the Senate chamber while alien delegates laughed at her. She remembered the fear in Kate's eyes when Earth went silent. She remembered every moment of doubt and despair that humans had faced over the past year. And she remembered that they had overcome all of it. She sent her response to. She told him that humanity welcomed new friends. She told him that the galaxy was changing and those who adapted would thrive. She told him that the fall of the Galactic Empire had begun the day Earth went silent. But the rise of humanity had begun the same day. They had always been meant for the stars. Now the stars knew it too.